This happened to me 2 years ago, just as I started my night shift at the intensive care unit on the hospital I used to work. I was supposed to do two 12-hour shifts from 6 to 6 on a Saturday and a Sunday. We had state-of-the-art equipment and patients were well cared for. On this particular shift, I was the one in charge of monitoring the vitals from the main console from midnight to the end of the shift. On bed 4, there was a young man who was recovering from a delicate surgery to his heart, and his chances of survival were slim. His condition worsened over the days, and we were sure he was going to die soon. Visitors were not allowed, so I decided to give him some comfort. According to his vitals, he was in a deep slumber, but he was able to hear what was said around him. For that reason, I told him every day and night to be strong and to keep on fighting. On that particular Saturday, around 3 a.m., the equipment detected a rise on his heartbeat and his brain activity. I went quickly to his bed to see what had happened, to find him with his eyes wide open and wide awake. He called me to come close to him. He wanted to thank me for all the support and the kind words I had given to him, and that he came to say goodbye. He asked me to say goodbye to his parents and his wife, to not to worry about him, because he was living in peace and had already seen the place where he was going. Then he asked me to kiss him in the forehead and to hold his hand. He smiled, and after a moment where he held his side on mine, he passed away. Nobody would have believed me if it were not for the telemetry of the equipment and the CCTV footage. Doctors cannot explain how he managed to wake up from that state and how his vitals stabilized just before passing. I like to believe that my kind words woke him up. I work in a public hospital for 10 years now. As many can suspect, these hospitals are in terrible conditions for the lack of funding due to budget cuts. We have very few beds, our equipment is outdated, and usually short on personnel, so the work is really difficult. It is located in a very convoluted area of the city where many crimes are committed, so a lot of wounded people arrive every single day. Attending someone stabbed or shot is as common as drinking your morning coffee. People usually speak that here appear a lot of ghosts, and I have seen my fair share of shadows and paranormal events. Maybe because the majority of people who die here come wounded because of violent attacks. These souls cannot rest and remain here, still holding grudges against the living. This particular night, a gang fight had taken place, and as you may expect, 6 wounded people arrived at the emergency room. We were already short on personnel, but in these cases, you have to multiply yourself to do your job. No matter what, as long as there is a chance, every life is worth saving. 5 of those 6 people were gang members, and the 6th was a 10-year-old girl who was unfortunate enough to have been hit by a bullet that ricocheted off a wall and hit her while on her bed. We did all we could to save her, but the bullet penetrated on a delicate area and did a terrible damage to her organs. As a nurse, you get used to these kinds of things, but this time I could not contain the emotion and started to cry. The little girl, realizing what was happening, grabbed me by my arm and told me that it was okay. "You did your best, thank you." My best was not enough, and for that reason she died. Before passing, she told me that she was happy because she was going to see her mommy and daddy. After a while I went to the resting room and broke apart. All 6 people had died. I have to be honest, I wasn't crying for the gang members. I was crying for the little girl whose life was cut short because of a stupid dispute. A few months later, the head nurse came and asked if I was okay and why had I collapsed in the emergency room. I did not understand what she meant, and she explained me that when the 5 gang members arrived, I just stood there, staring blankly straight ahead for half an hour, and then went rushing into the resting room. I told her that 6 people arrived and I was attending the little girl who also died. She looked at me straight in the eye and told me, "No, 5 people arrived, all gang members, all deceased now. There was no little girl." I have an uncle that had to stay in the hospital for several weeks due to an accident he had. He has no children, so I went every night to be his companion. He was sedated because of the many surgeries, so he was asleep most of the time. We didn't have a fridge or anything inside the room, and for this reason, I had to walk around 100 yards to the nurse's station on the other side of the wing to get water or to buy something from the vending machines. One night I woke up thirsty around 11 p.m. and left for the station. It was all dark as it should be, because of the late hour of the night. On this hall, only one door was open and had the only source of light. The room was number 20. It was midway between my uncle's room and my destination, so I had to pass by it. In this room was this man, around 50 years old, sitting on his bed. He looked tired. He was staring at the hallway from the inside of the room, and when he saw me, he called, "Young man, can you help me? It's getting late for my medication and the nurse has not arrived yet. Can you tell her I'm waiting?" I nodded and told him that I would be back with the nurse. He smiled and lied on his bed again. After drinking some water, I told the nurse about the man in room 20, a middle-aged man that looked really tired and was asking for his medicine, and if they wanted, I could bring it to him while I was going back. Both nurses in the station looked at each other, and after a long silence, one of them told me, "Room 20 is vacant. The man you were describing and the only occupant of that room died yesterday, and no one has been reassigned to that room." I told him that could not be possible. I just saw the man. The other nurse took out a file and gestured me to come closer. "See it with your own eyes." To my surprise and horror, there was a picture of the man reported as deceased the night before, of a kidney failure. Nobody has ever believed me this experience. I even got fired from the place it happened because the director said I was scaring people with my nonsense. The thing is that I used to inspect the bodies of the newly deceased before sending them to the hospital morgue. On one particular uneventful shift, I got a call to inspect the body around 8 o'clock. I was about to go for my break, but I decided to run the inspection before. The guy from the morgue was a grumpy lad, and I did not want to get in this bad side. I went with my checklists and saw just one body. It was of a young man, around 35, and was pretty much unblemished. Next to him was a note that described the cause of his passing: sudden death. I put on my gloves and ran my usual inspection procedure when, to my surprise, the man opened his eyes and turned his face to look at me. I was of course scared out of this world, only to hear the man say, "I'm thirsty. Can I have some water?" Then he closed his eyes again and went quiet. I ran as fast as I could to inform what had just happened to me, and that the man was not dead. Immediately, staff from the hospital went to check on the man, but he was quite dead. I have no proof other than my word for it, but I know what I saw, and even to this day, I still have terrible nightmares about it. If you reached this far, please give us a like, consider subscribing, activate notifications, and follow us on social media. Soon, we'll be back with more inside the cleft of the mansions.